Hello and very welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've already seen one of my videos. For today I figured we might just do a quick look through my old reading journal, so the one that I started for just half a year last year, and just have a look at what I read, because there were quite a few books that I really enjoyed that I haven't heard people talk about, so I figured let's go ahead and have a quick chat about them, and maybe there's something that you might want to read. So let's just get started. For my reading journal, I did start out with a bookshelf, and in the end it ended up being a bit fuller than I expected, but I didn't read quite as many magazines, which we will get back to in just a minute, and I have this lovely bookshelf set up which has a key, and back then I didn't track when I read the books, but rather just which type of book I consumed. So it did turn out quite well, and it does look quite nice with the color scheme. I also did a bingo, and as you can see I managed to do at least to get some bingos, and what I did last year was quite a bit too ambitious for myself, I think, which is I got inspired by all the reading challenges out there. So each of these bingo squares has quite a lot of books that I have to read for them, and that was a bit too much to achieve in half a year. So yeah, let's not do this again. That's why my new bingo board is a lot more relaxed, because in the end it was stressing me out just a little bit. But anyways, I also had a wish list, and as you can see I got to read quite a lot of my top 10 books that I wanted to read from the library, and also got through quite a lot of the books that they have in audio only, but I didn't read all the non-fiction books that I had considered. And I was also really bad in reading my physical TBR, which is quite a lot of old books in this case, but that was mostly because as I got back into library reading, books would turn out to be ready for me earlier than I expected, and then I never got to read my own books, and I was just reading library books, which is why I'm making that more of a focus for this year. In terms of my series tracker, I did finish The Hunger Games, of course, because I was still waiting on the final book in the series, and I have a few more series on here that I just didn't take along into the new year because I wasn't sure if I actually want to continue them, and I made the decision that I will only put on series that I actually read the first book of and that I'm sure that I want to continue. Next, I have one more challenge that I've found that I thought was looking really interesting, and that is the 52 Book Club Connections Challenge. You can surely still check it out. I just downloaded the graphics and just put them in here. And as you can tell, I didn't get through all of them, which is fine, which is why there's still my mark in here, so that I can actually continue this if I ever find another book with a woman on the cover, which doesn't sound that hard, but apparently I don't read a lot of those books. Anyways, I did want to read more magazines and articles worked out quite well. But for magazines, I didn't read quite as many as I wanted to read. So I'm trying again to make this more of a priority this year, and just to have one magazine going each month that I can read in between books, or whenever I just want a quick article read and not too much more. My reading stats are also looking quite nice at this point, and you can see that I'm reading about 5 books each month, which is, well, books and magazines, which is enough for me because I don't have that much time left over to read every day, so that's fine. I'm okay with that, and that's what I'm planning to continue as well. But I don't want to go into these stats too much because the setup was not quite as I wanted it, so next year will be better for sure. And now we're getting into the books, and you can see one of my monthly trackers filled out here. They will change a little bit over time, but I don't want to go too much into that. If you're interested to see how I set up one of these trackers, I have a video how I did that for January this year already, so you can check that out if you want to. And then I have my book spreads. I do have quite a few spreads that just have both books of a duology in here, and this is one of them. I really enjoyed reading Becky Chambers, but I think everybody has heard of these books by now, so you can check them out if you want to. And also I did some more reading, and normal books just get a single page and some nice setup as well. I won't talk about all of these because that would be a very long video, and I'm not planning on doing that today. But one of the series duologies that I really enjoyed and that I haven't heard anybody talk about is the Stormcrow series, which, well, I'm currently reading about dragons, and this is the same thing basically, but with crows. This is a setting in which there are huge crows. So crows are about the size of horses or even a bit bigger, and they have magic, and those are the only magical creatures in this world. And basically, one country that our main character is from is the one that has a lot of crows, and crows do all their work for them. And our main character, Princess Anthea, is basically the daughter of the ruler of this country, and the whole series starts out with a horrible attack on their country in which basically all the crows that they had were killed, and the queen was killed as well, and now the two daughters are struggling to somehow get all of this back under control and manage to save their country from invasion. So it is a YA book, but it is quite not really mature YA, but more mature YA, and there is a bit of a side plot, a bit of a romantic side plot in there as well, but the main focus is on the two sisters and the crows and getting their country back up running. So if that sounds like something that you might be interested in, I can recommend that you check it out. So let's continue on with another month, because that was quite a lot to read for July. And the next interesting book that you might have heard about, I'm not sure, is Girls Burn Brighter, which is completely different to the last one that I was talking about. This is a story about some girls growing up in rural India, and this was really hard to read or listen to in my case, because the library only has it as an audiobook. And basically we follow the stories of two Indian girls that grow up in a village, and one of them runs away and the other one gets married off, but to a really horrible family. And in the end they try to find each other again. It's not a nice, easy romantic book. It has quite a lot of difficult topics, so you shouldn't read it without knowing that. And you should probably look up the content warnings before you get into it. But it was a really interesting story, and while it was hard to read, it was also quite... it made me think a lot. So it was a really good book. Anyways, I don't think that you're into software architecture, and you've probably heard about most of these other books. So let me just continue on here. I have a nice little spread over here of all the new books that I bought, and hopefully, I've only read a few of these, and the others probably you'll see sometime this year on the channel, because I really want to get to all of these and read them, and I'm excited about it. So let's just keep going on here. And just as a side note, there is a German book that I read this year, so if you're German, you probably know Kalyn. If you are not German, I will surely read one more of his books this year as well, and then I'll talk about him a bit more. But anyways, let's get to another really good book that I haven't heard that much about. Obviously, you do hear a lot about Leigh Bardugo, but I hadn't quite heard much about The Familiar, which I just picked up in the bookstore because it sounded really interesting. And it was a really good read. It is a standalone, so it's not too much of an investment. And basically, we follow Lucia in Spain, who is just working as a maid and doesn't have a great life, but she does have magic. And in this very Catholic Spain, which is also more historical setting here, of course, that is something that has to be given by God, because otherwise it's bad. And so we follow her fall into the trap of telling or showing too much of her magic and having to struggle with surviving afterwards. And it was quite an interesting story. So yeah, if you like historical fantasy and strong female characters, why not check it out? And with that, let's move on. Well, don't have to talk about this one, but I already did in my first video. Blood over Brighthaven was amazing. Really, really deeply challenging themes, and I enjoyed it. Not much more to say about that. Yeah, let's skip ahead into the later part of the year. I did try my hand at the reading challenge, the Bewitched book challenge from Erin Smith, who also has a channel on here, which I follow quite a bit. And I didn't get through all of them because it's a lot of reading, and I decided to just also do some reading in November and December because that was too much for me otherwise. But it was fun. I didn't get too many points though. Yeah, I did continue reading some Mark Lawrence, which I liked as well, and who will come up during this year as well, because obviously this is a series, and so I'll talk about that then. Yeah, and continued reading broadly as much as I can. Well, yeah, this is a nice one as well. So if you're interested in role-playing, you might know the Great GM YouTube channel, or Guy Sclanders, and he has a few books out, and this is the first one that I actually really worked through, and I really enjoyed it. I thought there was quite a good amount of advice in here. So if you do like role-playing, especially GMing, then maybe check it out. Otherwise, it's probably not for you. And this continues with a few more stories. And also my newer trackers that have my daily calendar on here as well. Another 5-star that I already talked about. And the series that I'm currently reading as well. And as you can probably tell, I'm reading quite a few books as well that people talk about a lot, because I get interested and then I just tend to pick up things. But I also pick up other things, and one of these was Tethered Spirits, which is quite an interesting book as well, and I haven't heard about it from anyone, which is because I got it as a reviewer's copy through the website that I use to have some of my books tracked, which is Library Thing. And this was an interesting read, quite literary, and dealing with the first German settlers in Canada and how they interacted with the natives living there, as well as how two families, one native and one German settler family, survived the early years of the settlement, which does sound really interesting to me because I have part of my family, I mean, I'm German, and part of my family did move to Canada, not in this time, but quite a bit later. But still, it is an area that sounded really interesting to hear about. And it was really well told. It's not an easy, fun read that just has very, very simple, funny characters. It's quite deep. There's a lot of traumatic issues happening as well. because of the natives just being horrifically treated and not taken as full people, which obviously is not a good thing to do and is not a nice time to think back on. But it was really educational, so if that is something that interests you, you should definitely pick it up. It's quite a fascinating read. So with that, we only have more books that I did hear about somewhere else. Apart from maybe these two that I heard about on a computer science conference, but I don't think that they're really the right thing for everybody, so let's just continue on. And I've already shared this page of my favorite books of the second half of the year, but what I've done afterwards, which you haven't seen, is just I filled up the year with all the other reads that I had before I started the journal, and you can already tell just by looking at it that there were quite a few less books than once I did start the journal. But yeah, let's just have a really quick look at these. What actually got me back into reading, or into reading more regularly, was the trilogy about The Prison Healer by Lynette Noni, which I've heard quite a bit about as well, and I can just say it's a really, really good trilogy. I enjoyed it immensely. And also the Truly Devious series by Maureen Johnson, which were 5 fun little mystery reads that were really quick to read and just kept me entertained throughout, which did help in getting back into reading more. The other ones that I read were quite a lot of them were nonfiction and have to do with my work, so I'm not going to go into these ones too much. And the other ones I already heard about on booktube as well. So yeah, let's call this finished. This was my nice little reading journal for the half of last year. And hopefully it sounded interesting enough for you, and maybe you even found something that you do want to read still. So yeah, thank you for watching and have a nice day. I'll see you next time.